Hello, everybody. This is Nick, man from Seoul. I know that you all haven't seen a video from me in quite a while because I have not posted a video in quite a while. But here is a video for your viewing pleasure. And as you can see, it is not only me, but it is also my friend Lucas, who goes by Nuan Sonar. And those of you who are familiar with my glitch.cool shenanigans probably recognize his name as another glitch.cool member. And he recently had a two-track EP, or I guess it's technically a single because singles have two tracks. I don't really know. We can ask him in a second here, but he had two tracks come out, and the release is called New Horizon, and this track here is track two on that. All right, so we're going to be listening to track number two on New Horizon called "If I Was." And so before we play through it in Lucas's DAW here, Lucas, why don't you tell us a bit about this track, kind of what you were thinking about it, and then we'll go ahead and play it through.
Sure. If I was started off as an attempt to try to capture that like really almost like wavetable lead, super just discordant kind of like heavy nature of like Sophie's music. So this is actually just like a bit of a Sophie influence, starting off the track creation. Um, it kind of shifted down the line. I think I was really interested in the track Cyberglobe by Volume. Specifically, I think the rhythms and just how the drums sounded. They've got like a really nice swingy, fat kind of vibe. So I wanted to take both of those influences and kind of create some like really abrasive, textured glitch kind of just groove music.
All right, let's take a listen.
Alrighty.
is such a good tune. I really like it, Lucas. You did a great job on that one.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it as well. I had a ton of fun making this one, honestly. I really, really enjoy um just kind of like really, really stompy, heavy rhythms and textures and stuff like that. And I think this track is definitely one of my better ones as far as like kind of hitting that sort of stride.
It doesn't, the thing is, it doesn't like it's definitely heavy and it definitely has like that kind of stompy characteristic, but it doesn't have the like, it has a very much like a playfulness that you don't normally find with like stompy music like that.
Mm,
And so obviously this is a very like beat driven track, like it's very rhythm oriented. I've always
mhm.
tell people that you were one of the best people I know at making like grooves in a DAW, and I
Thank you so
listening
much.
to this again, definitely I stand by that statement. So I was hoping you can kind of break down a bit how you approach like the drums specifically in here, and we can kind of start with talking about that a bit.
Yeah, no, for sure. First and foremost, I think the main sort of hook with the drums is like this really hyper textured kind of like vocoded Foley loop that I made a while back. It's I believe it's in glitch.cool's first sample pack. But
Yeah, I see you got a lot of Glitch with Friends samples in here. I'm seeing some sunk samples around and stuff.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, one of yours is the one of the main melodies as well.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well,
But
let's
yeah.
let's take a listen to this. Yeah.
So it's just like these little like like flushes and kind of sprays of just like Foley like basically you take like just like any sort of drum loop or drum sample, pitch it down so it's got like a really like thick, girthy kind of like waveform. And then that allows like a really, really good carrier signal for like any sort of subtle kind of stuff. So like some of these I put like dried leaves or like just like crunching flowers, like dried flowers, just stuff that's like really, really delicate in texture. Um, and when you have such like a large carrier signal, it really kind of helps those harmonics shine through. And then after that, it's just like compression and distortions and stuff like that to really bring it out. But
That's interesting. I've
yeah,
never, because whenever I do vocoding with stuff, I always feel
Mhm.
like you lose a lot of the nice high end, crispy, kind of delicate stuff. I feel like vocoding is very much a way to kind of like flatten the complexity of sounds.
Mhm.
But that sounds like it's the opposite of what you're doing here, right?
A little bit, yeah. It definitely depends on the source signal. So like
Okay.
if you use something that already has like a ton of like high end harmonics and texture and stuff like that in it, and then apply a vocoder, you're just gonna get these really warbly kind of gross high ends, you know.
Yeah.
If it's relatively smooth, or like I said, if you pitch it down a couple semitones, it tends to even some of that high end out. And what ends up happening is the Foley kind of takes over that high end, and just using the same sort of energy and dynamics of the carrier signal, the Foley tends to really shine through and sparkle.
That's I feel like that's something I've always kind of wanted to try and do, but I never really like in my mind had like a good way to do that. But I think
Mhm.
later today after we do this call, I'm gonna go and try that because that's genius. Like that's a really good idea.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I was all right. So like I kind of stumbled into that as well. I was trying to replicate like just some of the really like nice kind of gritty distortions of like Cohen soundtracks, like old ones off of
Oh yeah,
Dynasty.
yeah,
Dynasty in particular has got like that like just ridiculous like wet
yeah, dude. The
squelchy.
first time I
Yeah.
heard that song, I was like, "What the fuck is this? Like this is
Yeah.
amazing!" Like,
Yeah. No, it like it still holds up to this day just because of like just the unique characteristics of each kind of like Foley and stuff like that. But I was trying to replicate that and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I was just like, well, I know it's a vocoder and I know there's Foley, so I just started playing around with it. And
exactly.
yeah, and the end result is something like this. I can actually grab this and stretch it out real quick just to kind of give the full loop here.
Yeah.
At least this is kind of the loop that I then chopped up and stuff like that. But mm, stuff. This is actually halftime as well. Yeah, so it was really original density.
Okay.
And there's just like little automation flourishes and stuff like that here and there, just some delays. Nothing like super fancy, but
Yeah.
I really like creating loops like this as like a good starting place for just mangling and
Yeah, because then yeah, like you said, like when you resample them later and do other stuff, there's a lot you can do with it. And
Mhm.
so that's really cool. That's I mean, I like how chunky the kind of low end on those kicks sound and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's that's also in part due to the carrier signal. Like I just pitched down a bunch of just kicks and like a snare. It was like a really simple pattern, but because it already had like it was like such a wide kind of stretched out sample dynamically.
Hmm.
Uh, you don't really lose too much with vocoding.
Yeah.
But if I try to vocode like smaller things or smaller samples that don't really have that nice decay, it tends to get like you lose a lot of punch and just character to the sound.
Certainly. Well, so okay, so the drum sound design then is obviously very very excellent, but what makes a good drum line isn't just the sound design. It's obviously like the way that the timing and the structure and everything. So
Mhm.
now that we've seen a bit about how the sounds are designed, why don't you show us a bit about how you the thought process that went into structuring the rhythm and like getting that kind of groove, because that there's some serious groove in this track.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll just play a little bit of the drums themselves just to kind of showcase. So you can kind of hear it here. Just seeing all the tracks laid out like this as well. I have what I like to call like impacts and kind of accents when it comes to like drum groove creations. I usually like to have a decent strong downbeat, especially for something like a track like this where it's like really kind of obvious and it's got that, like swung kind of quality to it.
Yeah.
Um, I'll usually start with one or two downbeats and then I'll have a bunch of other kicks kind of scattered throughout to act as essentially like you can do this like one of two ways. You can either like if you're messing with like velocity sensitive drum kits, you can just kind of have like really small velocity kicks throughout. Um, but I found that it's also nicer to be able to kind of separate those softer kicks and add different effects to them as well.
Yeah.
Um, just different compression levels and stuff, just kind of make them shine or have their own real like characteristic. So we've got some kicks here, just basically just a transient, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily punch or like show through the mix like too gracefully or dramatically, but it's all about just kind of adding like layers here and there. So like I have a clawed kick on top of it or under it as well. I think this is like more of like a low. Yeah, it's got like that nice subby like doom.
Yeah.
And just kind of alternating between these different types of kicks and like where they sort of fall within like the groove and the loop. So like when you add this kick in there as well, this one's like a more natural sounding kick, but it just sounds blown out. So you get like that nice low end with this kick. This carries the transient punch, and this sort of carries the room tone, and then just kind of alternating between those three kicks in various ways. I think you can get some really interesting sounding grooves, um, without necessarily having to like program super hard with it because they each have their own decay, attack sustain, decay release, and stuff like that. So you're sort of playing off of the natural differences between each drum sound to kind of emphasize groove in different ways.
That makes a lot of sense. And so here, then answer this for me. The so
Mhm,
that lovely texture loop that you have up there, the orange one. That
mhm.
so is the low end from that coming through, or is that like all being high passed to make room for the kicks, or like how are you managing like the bass and all this? Because like this has like some really girthy low end, but it doesn't really ever sound crowded. How do you pull that off?
Um, it's definitely very challenging. I think during the more like starting phases of a song's like life, I tend to just have everything blown the fuck out on the low end. It just sounds like trash, and then it's just all about, like, going back through each layer with, like, these sort of, like, brushstroke sort of mentality. So it's just like, okay, after you set, like, the initial sort of composition or initial loop and stuff like that, it's kind of going back and taking a look at, like, what provides, like, certain levels of, like, intensity. So with, like, this lovely drum loop here, um, I like, it does have a decent amount of low end to it, but I wanted it more to be sort of like an atmospheric rumble because this is more of like a room tone sound because of the way, like, the flange is affecting it and the different stereo effects are kind of coming in. So,
Right.
like, and there's also, I believe corpus on here. Yeah, there's some corpus, processing going on as well, just to give it a bit of, like, weird tonality and,
Gotcha.
space as well, but
Yeah.
it,
Real quick, so for those who don't know what corpus is, it's a resonator, right?
yeah, I believe it's like a resonator and also like a physical modeling kind of plugin.
Mhm.
So I use it a lot for basically giving tonality to a lot of like atonal instruments or effects and stuff like that. You can also just straight up use it to just like make your sounds a bit more like atonal as well. Uh, just because the plugin itself has a lot of flexibility. I mean, you can send MIDI notes to it if you want, which I do during a couple of these tracks as well. But yeah, you can keep it like vague tuning, and I tend to like the plate, the pipe, and the tube kind of physical models.
Right.
The strings and like the murmura and the membrane tend to add like a ton of harmonics. So I usually have to like, you know, mess with like the brightness and harmonic content like crazy, but the tube stuff is always just like dummy thick every time. So it's a good go-to.
No, that's really cool, and I never thought of you know doing that. That makes a lot of sense. Um, that's really fascinating. So, um, I guess this is a pretty good overview of the drums then so far. I mean, this track feel like in a way it feels like it's like kind of like 99% drums. Well, I mean, well, you have those little like synth licks and everything. So, but I guess like
Yeah,
yeah. So why don't you tell us a bit about those synth licks?
sure. So recently I got a semi-modular hardware synth by the name of the Matriarch.
Oh, really? I
And
didn't know you did.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
sick.
oh, I love it so much.
Yeah. No, the Matriarch looks like a really nice synth. Absolutely.
It's beautiful. It's very very well designed, so much fun to play with. But I think the thing that I really really like the most about it is I grew up kind of electronic music adjacent. I was always really interested in like really sort of like loud distortions and textures like that. I was a big like Rage Against the Machine fan when I was a kid. Still am, to be honest, but just being able to play with sound and kind of route audio in really weird and interesting broken ways is kind of like how I would compose when I was younger, especially when I was like playing guitar. Um, but having the synth sort of reinvigorated that sort of jammy set, you know, like jam sesh kind of quality to like creating melodies and harmonies and different sound design and stuff like that. So the synth lines are basically just a result of letting like this backing beat play. Um, at this point in the track's life, the bass design was already more or less finished. So I basically laid out the drums and then worked on the bass underneath, which sounds like this. And my goal with that was to essentially keep a lot of bottom weight and harmonics while keeping the mid and top really, really wide sounding
Yeah.
because the drums are pretty centered, like for the most part, like in the mix. There's some slight sort of room, but it's more towards like the edges of the mix. So if like, you know, mixes straight here, they're kind of mixed out here to give like a nice sense of room presence. Um, so I wanted to have a layer that's sort of really wrapped around, which is this layer. Yeah, and it's just high pass vital patch. Um, that sort of layers with this bottom, just
And that
kind
bottom
of
part is from your matriarch, right?
no, this is actually
Oh,
all, Vital stuff, I believe,
oh,
or
okay,
I think it might be some operator and stuff too.
okay.
But, the matriarch kinda came in after all that was finished, and, it's just like these I would record 5 to 10-minute stretches of just audio, um,
Hmm.
just really, really long kind of modulations and stuff like that. I would just, like, loop this whole section, and, I sent the MIDI of the main sort of melody. It's like these percussive hits. Let me see if I can find it. So it's just like a snare. I think it's actually your snare.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It sounds kind of
yeah.
familiar, but I think it's because I've
Let me
listened to
find it.
this track like a number of times. So I don't know if it's familiar from that or familiar because I recognize the
Yeah,
snare.
that's fair. This is what it sounds like, just no effects.
Oh yeah, yep, that sounds familiar. I made that.
Yep. But, I really, really liked, just, like, the almost, like, pan snare-esque, like, quality to it. It was, like, nice and metallic, so I was just like, "Okay, I could definitely take those harmonics and really let them shine and kinda bring that out." So then, this is actually just getting sent from, this sort of um, MIDI note collage here
Hmm.
of, just various melody, and this is being sent, and routed to the corpus you saw up here with, these, like, lovely textured stuff like that. It's getting sent to, believe, this snare here, and then probably one or two other places. I might have put them on, like, cymbals or something like that, but I was the goal with that is to try to, like, really have that melody be present and pronounced while not actually giving any sort of direct attention to it, you know? It's almost kinda, like, implied with how the end result sort of came out. At least that was my intention because
That's something that's really hard to pull off. Like it's I props to you for doing that because I for me when like I really like if I put like a synth into something
Mhm,
like a lead synth, if it like has to take the lead and like the only way to get it to not is if I like drench it in reverb and basically turn it into a pad. That's like it's really hard to pull
mhm.
off like a middle ground where it's not like the main thing, but it's still like prominent enough to make a statement.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and, I think that just, like I'd say this mixdown overall is, like, relatively unbalanced. It's definitely, like, very much so, like, drum present forward, like,
Yeah,
and then, like, followed very closely by the bass. The rest of the stuff just kind of, tends to, like, peek in and out and around the mix every once in a while, and, usually for emphasis, it's usually, like, on a snare hit or something like that. It'll really splash, and I try to keep it, like, wide and moving.
yeah.
Um, but as far as the matriarch, synth hits, like I said, it was just like these long segments of audio that I just chopped down to these little bits,
Mhm.
um, usually for emphasis and stuff. So it's like just like this little like scritchy scratch. Um, this also has some effects on it as well, I believe here. Yeah, just some simple flanging and EQ just to kind of tidy it up.
Yeah.
Nothing super major. I with this one in particular, I really wanted to keep the low end because like with the lovely textures and stuff like that, I tended to really scoop it just to make room for the bass. But I think in these smaller instances, it's not like super necessary, just because they're points of emphasis anyway. So if you cut out the bass, it just kind of thins it out, makes it sound just like it doesn't really belong, you know?
Right. So so you said that a lot of these like little synth squiggles and stuff came from like a huge like 10-minute session of synthing, right?
Hmm.
Do you still have is that in this session somewhere? Is that something we could kind of see?
Sure,
But
yeah.
I'm not going to
We
ask you to like play the whole 10 minutes for us, but like we can just kind
Yeah,
of if you kind of just kind of scrub around and show us kind of what that sounds like.
absolutely, yeah. Let me turn off all the effects as well. So yeah, just like these really long chains is you can almost like see the exact like melody that I was showing earlier in the
Yeah.
MIDI. But turn this up. Yeah, this is just believe yeah, just some saturation, mild compression.
Mhm.
Just to kind of it's more like a glue sort of plugin.
Gotcha.
Uh yeah,
Okay.
and then just an amp and a chorus, but without it, it's still sounds pretty tonal and decent.
Like a dub siren.
Yeah, this patch is like kind of G funk, a little bit like West Coast vibe,
Yeah,
which I think really kind of suited the track's aesthetic overall. Just kind of like that really like shuffly, stompy kind of vibe.
yeah. And so is the whole sound jam just like riffing on that same kind of like style, or do you like do a lot of knob turning and it sounds really different at the end? Like,
Yeah, yeah. So there's definitely a couple things I modulated in that regard. Just kind of, I think I patched in an LFO into like the filter and stuff like that. So I really only had to mess with like two things to get like pretty drastically different timbres. The mod rates, the filter cutoff, and then just the mod wheel. And then based off of the combination of those three, you can get some pretty drastically different results. The modulation rate in particular, I think, was the one that really tended to change the sound the most because it took it away from its sort of tonal center. Basically, remodulating it past like an octave or two past where its original pitch was. So you get these like really long, dramatic kind of like just grungy and gritty kind of sounds. Let me see if I can find one in particular. Yeah. So like you can hear it just sounds like it's like peeling almost, just like
yeah.
from you're like peeling the sound from like these upper harmonics. Yeah.
God, that is such a good tone.
Yeah, just like these awful sounds.
Well, but that's like it's yeah. I mean, you call them awful, and like you're not wrong. It sounds like shit, but like it's funny because like you and I hear that we're like, dude, this rules. Like we can make so
Yeah,
many cool
right,
sounds
right.
out of this. And normal people are like, they're like, this sounds like ass. Like this is awful. Like
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, but like sounds like that. I fucking love sounds like that because you pop them in a granular synth or something and do all sorts of
Oh
wacky stuff
yeah.
with them. Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess I can talk a little bit about just kind of chopping and editing those.
yeah. Please
I
do.
would say I go like super in depth, like say like Jim Kimchi does. Um, like his is like very like granular micro kind of edits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um,
For context for the audience, if you don't know who Jim Kimchi is,
oh
go pause
yeah,
this and fix that right this fucking second. Like,
yeah.
no, he's
Listen to Pure Gravy. Listen to his clipping remix.
yeah, exactly. He's another glitch.cool guy, and he makes baller music. In fact, I'm gonna see if I can get him on one of these sometime. I want to do more of these with you guys, and so I'm if you hear this, Victor, I'm coming for you. All right, but yeah, please show us how you edited these.
Sure. So I really love working with audio. You can see just like most of this entire track is audio. I really love being able to just kind of take something just really quickly, like flip it, reverse it, mess with the timing, double the tempo. Um,
Would you like Missy Elliott, like put the thing down, flip it, or reverse it, like?
all day. But but yeah, I find it's the easiest to get really interesting results quickly, especially when you're just mocking stuff up with audio as opposed to MIDI, because there's like this mindset I've got, like if I'm working in MIDI, I'm gonna be like tweaking and dialing and perfecting parameters and stuff like that. But with audio, you just kind of have to like you gotta send it and just go.
Yeah, I like that a lot about it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think Ableton in particular has like a really nice sort of means of audio editing as well, but. Yeah, as far as like stuff like this goes, this is just like small cuts off of that like, longer 5 minute stretch.
Hmm.
And then something like this where it's just
Yeah, I love the little like they almost sound like 70s like sci-fi synthy kind of bleeps and bloops, like
Mhm.
like old movies from back then. They just had really like kind of boring, like boring to us. Like I guess like little like sine wave kind of little like
It's
whoos
yeah,
going
yeah,
on
yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, like it reminds me of that, but like I'm honest, it sounds a little out of place, but in a way that like really works. Like I know that's like a contradiction, but like I don't know, like it does not sound like the rest of the sound design, but it just kind of I don't know, it just works. I don't know how it just does.
Yeah, I think, like, what I was really going for with kind of introducing all these smaller conflicting, let's say, like, just, like, samples and interludes and stuff like that is just to kind of, just give a lot of, like, tonal variety, especially with just because the drum loop in this one is such a strong present kind of texture. Um, like, even without it, the cuts were deliberately, like, gated and stuff like that. I wanted to have,
Mhm.
like, a very, very small, subtle reverb just because it's such a large, kind of stompy sound. So just having, like, these little sort of smaller, subdued kind of bits to it. This might be my favorite synth in the entire
Play it again. Yeah, on this entire section that we're like seeing here on the screen, that like it's such a satisfying little like I don't know, like little synth line. And like so the thing that I've like kind of like realized makes like a really interesting like glitch synths is because I so a while ago one of my viewers actually asked me to do like a video on how to like do melodic and glitchy kind of stuff, and like I hadn't really like thought too much about it before, but I realized like the best way to kind of do it is to, at least for me, is to take something that's like normal melodic or like mostly melodic, and then treat it like you do like resampled glitch audio, and then
Yep.
like you basically do what you've done here with it. And like when you preserve the tonality but kind of just like wreck the context that the tonality exists in and like rearrange it like it's like, atonal glitch sounds, like you
Mhm.
get these really really interesting like reformulated melodies like this that like, if someone had like transcribed this melody to audio, it'd be kind of hard because it's like it's like shifting in and out of being tonal.
Yeah. Yeah, like, the fundamental definitely, like, whips and wanes around
Yeah. So
like
this
that.
whole little section that you have on the screen right now, can you
Mhm.
play through that like again for, yeah, like
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm putting my finger up to the screen like you can fucking see what I'm doing, but like
There we go.
there we go.
Yeah, I think something else that's, like, really, really important when, working with these kind of quick cuts and sort of fills, I really, really enjoy when, things kind of overlap. It's definitely, like, it could be considered maybe a mixing faux pas, but depending on the type of sound, that you use together, it definitely adds a lot of fluidity in between elements, and it doesn't sound like these harsh kind of,
Yeah.
I dropped, like, 7 samples in a row, and here's them, like, constantly flipping back and forth,
If it makes you feel any better, my entire channel is like a big mixing faux pas. Like it's
Yeah,
that's like the whole theme of this channel. Like
yeah, that's fair.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think the type of music that we do is so outside of like the wheelhouse of normal kind of music that's kind of the thing. Quick question before
Yeah,
you minimize all that away though.
sure, sure.
So the orange like kind of synth line the with like the bit of reverb on it. Yeah, that one.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, so I'm hearing a bit of like reverb or delay or something on that, but not on anything else. Is that like baked into like is that part of the original audio signal or is that like a post thing?
Yeah, so with this one, there is a bit of, like, a feedback delay internally,
Hmm.
on the matriarch,
Yeah.
um and the matriarch outputs into stereo signal. Um, so I was taking the input for both like left and right for channels like 5 and 6. I think that's what I have
Okay.
assigned to the matriarch. Um, so you can get these really really cool kind of stereo delay effects without actually messing with the phase too much, just because it's all internal within the hardware.
Gotcha.
Um, I try not to use it too much. Like for certain sounds, it definitely works better, but it can also like really muddy things because once that delay just really starts popping off, the feedback on it just it goes nuts. It
Yeah.
gets like its own tonality, and it just it's definitely kind of like a quick like sprinkle effect, as
Certainly.
opposed to just like leave it on kind of thing.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
ask because
and
that's
then
like one of my favorite techniques when I'm like making audio to then resample, like whether it's
mm,
like, all in the box or whether I'm using my modular rig here. is like
Mm.
having a bit of like reverb or delay that gets baked to audio and then gets resampled with it, and then
Oh yeah, yeah.
you with reverb you can get this almost cool like kind of like sucking motion when you're like resampling it because it's like kind of coming in and out with the audio. I don't know.
Oh yeah. If you
It's
compress it and like add some OTT and stuff like that to it as well, you can get like
yeah,
these really just like long, almost just swaths of sound from just like a little bit of reverb on a synth.
exactly. So all right, so that's like the synth licks. Do you think you could show us real quick the like the actual like vital and operator patches for the bass?
Of course.
Yeah, I kind of want to see those. Like personally, I don't layer things very much. Like I just don't. So I'm
Mm.
kind of interested in seeing how you approach it here because maybe it's something I could personally benefit from, and maybe my viewers could too.
Oh yeah, definitely. I I've recently started kind of trying to layer in across like multiple tracks a bit more.
Hmm.
How I used to kind of process something like this is I would take like maybe the original sound here, and it's like the sub layer, so it's a bit boring, but um, basically just take something kind of simple, add some distortion effects to it, like saturators, EQs, all that jazz, and then I would just basically like, group it together, and then that would just be like an upper harmonic layer, and then just add another one, and then just keep continuing going on and on and on until it's sort of got the tone and the timbre that I wanted. But when I was listening to Face Shopping by Sophie,
Hmm.
like I was trying to like deconstruct that in my head, and I was thinking like, what am I really hearing on these like really big hits? Because she's got like these really cool kicks in there that sound like distorted. They have like punch, but there's also like a bass layer. It sounds like there's another like serum layer on top of that to where like it feels like a bunch of different layers that were like just like smashed into like a glue compressor or something like that or a drum bus and just like really given like a nice sense of life in that regard. So my goal with this was to try to reconstruct that the best I could. And definitely like the first layer I heard or wanted to emulate was just like this sub layer, which just got like a tonality of just like this nice FM sort of
Yeah, has like that
harmonic.
like a couple like second or third order harmonics from the fundamental or something like that. Like
Yeah.
yeah, not just pure sub.
Yep, and then just a little bit of pitch bend automation as well, just to get it nice and punchy.
Is that
I
what I'm
was like,
hearing right at the beginning? It almost sounds like a kick.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it.
Just
Almost sounds like an actual like bass guitar.
oh yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I like having these kinds of like FM sort of sounds, kind of basic, right?
Hmm.
For like low sub and low bass and stuff like that, because I think it sounds pretty huge, uh, if you kind of in the right context and stuff. Um, but as far as the bass patches go,
Yeah.
it's very simple. Yeah, it's actually yours too.
Oh hey.
Yeah, just what effects do I have on here? I think just a chorus, yeah.
Oh wow. So it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I with with this one I was definitely trying to approach it with like keep the sounds as basic as possible, but just like really build them up over time. I think this one might be a little bit, yeah. This one's definitely like the more complicated one. And I like to have a few of these types of sounds here. Um that basically these are kind of like when you listen to like a just like a really neuro heavy track, right?
Hmm.
um these are the kinds of layers in my mind that prevent like repetition from getting too boring, because they're kind of constantly changing and modulating, and they've got like a really complex sort of enveloping going on just across like FM synthesis and stuff like that. So this one's got just like a almost like a barky sort of
Yeah.
tonality to it. And I think these two layers really jive well, which is when I was starting making this kind of sound. Definitely started with the sub and then just keep that like nice and punchy, but like it's also not a ton of like high end harmonic. Um, like, I feel like that's pretty common to see in a lot of, like, neuro type music.
Yeah,
It's just, like, a ton of upper harmonic, but I wanted to match the synth hits up here, like the little matriarch, uh, scrubs,
yeah.
and, the matriarch has got more of, like, a mid-warm analog kind of tonality, so it's like, if I overdo this, it's just gonna sound disjointed and not, not cohesive enough, but
Yeah, that's kind of the thing about this track that I find so impressive is like there's so much subtlety in everything, and like everything kind of leaves space for everything else while still having like a ton going on.
mm,
There's like a lot of the kind of hyper glitch stuff that that I do sometimes, or that like some other people in our collective or people kind of adjacent to us do. We'll have just like one or two things playing at once, and they're very big and taking up space. And then in order to make room for something
mm,
else, they have to like completely go away for other things to come in. But this has kind of like a lot of little things, all kind of like weaving in and out of each other in a way that's like very subtle.
mm,
That's definitely something that I don't know. It's definitely a different mindset that's a lot harder to pull off. It's like the whole horizontal versus vertical complexity type
mhm.
paradigm. Yeah. Um, but cool. And for that kind of more barky synth, you think we could see the patch in whatever synth that you're using for it?
For operator, yeah, for I think it was this one.
Yeah, that one.
So that one is just I think these are all sine waves. I tend to use mostly sine waves when working with the FM synthesis just because it's a little bit easier to tame and control.
Right.
Just got some filter automation here. And these are very, very similar patches as well. So I most likely probably created this one first.
It's not showing up on the screen from what I can see. Is there?
Oh.
I know your monitor's a different resolution. Maybe it's like off screen.
Here, let me see if I can. Might see a bit of my desktop. Can you see that or no?
Um, like I can see like the very top of it. Oh, no, it's gone.
Oh, yep. Okay, hang on. How about this?
There we go. Now I can see that. Yeah.
Excellent. Cool,
And
cool, cool.
so here's the thing. So I actually know like basically nothing about Operator since I don't use Ableton Live.
Hmm.
So this is gonna be kind of interesting for me to figure out what's going on here. But my viewers who are
Yeah,
using Ableton, this is probably like bread and butter type stuff.
yeah, this is definitely like one of the first synths I started playing with like software synths back in
Mhm.
like Ableton 8. Um, so I've always just kind of used operator, one because I wanted to be culprit, but also I think you can get it's a tad unwieldy, but I think it has a great like starter kind of carrier signal. So like um, it's really really useful to start something in operator and then just kind of mangle it down the line with different effects processing.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
so
that's
like
something we have in common. The first synth I really learned how to use was FL Studio Citrus, which is
oh
also
yeah, yeah.
it's also an FL or FM synth with
Hmm,
it has like six operators that you can cross modulate with each other or something like that.
hmm.
And yeah, that was obvious. It maybe wasn't the smart idea for a newcomer like me to just dive right into FM synthesis 'cause I had no idea what I was doing. But um, kind of funny how that seems to have like shaped both of our experiences so similarly.
Yeah. It's fun. I think FM synthesis is probably like where I really learned to appreciate stuff that isn't so perfectly tonal. Um there's another synth that I really really enjoy by the name of Lush 101 and I basically only use that to make like super saws.
Yeah.
It's just got like these dummy thick super saws and that's what I wanted to do starting out. So I ended up learning a lot about kind of how FM processes and just how operator works in general because I was trying to get it to sound like an analog synth,
Right.
you know? So just kind of playing with these different sort of routings and stuff like that. Like this right now, I believe, is routed so that this is secondary to these three. So this modulates this, and then this is just separate layer.
Gotcha.
Um,
And it's all just sine waves, you said?
yeah.
Nice.
Yep. Yep. Um, yeah, and then there's another sort of if this is like this sort of impact bass, this one's like the higher sort of call and response.
Yeah.
And then I layered these both together as well at the end here. I can show you these patches. I think this one is yeah, okay, that's this. Just a nice simple sort of fluttery kind of texture, and then just like disgusting meat. Red raw red beef.
Well, it sounds really good. I mean, wrong with some raw beef.
Like, yeah. And I can extract these and make some racks out of them and stuff like that, just for anyone who's watching. If they wanna play around with these, I can make sure that the download is available for y'all.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you do that, let me know and I'll put it in the description.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
right on. Well, cool. So let's before we wrap up this video, what
Mhm.
are there any other sound design elements that you want to highlight or any other kind of features before? Because I'm going to ask you a bit about like the overall mixing and mastering, but before that, I kind of want to ask like if there's any other thing you want to highlight.
Sure, yeah, I think in particular, my definitely my favorite part of the track, is probably after the first initial burst where it sort of calms down a bit, and then heads into the sitar sample. And, I was playing around with some different spacing and sort of harmonies and stuff like that with this section, so I'll just play it real quick. And I think that section is where the song really kind of comes alive. At
Yeah,
least
I
that was
agree.
definitely the part where I had the most fun, just kind of like you know, like when you're working on a song and stuff like that, and you add a couple elements and you just play it back, you're like, "Wow, whoa, wait a sec, this kinda slaps, this
Well,
kinda goes."
you know how if you ever see people who play like real instruments like live or whatever, like
Mm.
they have like they're all making like really like funny faces while they're playing the bass. They're like yeah, like
Staying facing it?
yeah, the
Yeah,
steak
yeah,
face. Yeah,
yeah.
like when that I think the first time I listened to this when that sitar came in, I was like ooh, like that's that's that feeling that I'm sure those instrumentalists get like when they get the like the staying face. That's kind of what I felt when that came in. Um,
Yeah,
you
good,
said that's
good.
like a sitar sample.
Yeah, it's this sort of weird sample I got online somewhere. I think it was freesounds.org, something like that.
Hmm.
Just
I love sitar
uh,
samples. I used to use them before I made music as Man from Soul. I had like another
mm,
alias, and I was like trying to use them a lot in that. And I
mm.
kind of stopped for a while, but like maybe I should start again. Like sitars are sick. Like
They're fucking awesome, yeah. They
yeah,
sound so cool.
yeah,
It's like this weird hybridization of like banjo kind of pluck with like that metal kind of timbre and you know upper harmonic content to it. But they also have like the capacity for like these really delicate, nice kind of
yeah,
just strings and ring outs. The way that it resonates across
yeah.
time is really really nice.
Because they got all like the sympathetic strings in there. That's very cool. So how'd you process this sitar then?
This is it's a mess. uh, I'll play it on its own, but this one I probably had the most trouble with, and I think this is definitely like one of the pitfalls of working with audio, because the original sample I wouldn't say it's like especially great. I mean, it's there, but it sounds so dull and just there's baked in reverb and delay and stuff like that too. Like
Hmm.
just
It's a
the
little
pain there.
plain, yeah,
Yeah. So just adding a couple reverbs just to give it some space. And then from there, I did something that I think is a little bit interesting. I basically used gates to help bring up the ambience, but also sort of act as like a transient tamer a little bit. So like this really only kicks in once like the sort of echo comes through. And I was working with like timing it so that the drums would kind of have that relationship as well. So this is what I do a lot when I do like a bunch of mixing. I'll pick like one or two key elements across the track and just compare them. Trying to build up like these small sort of relationships in the mix between different elements. And then once you have like multiple sets of pairs, just start comparing like okay, so this sitar with like maybe the snare or something like that. Just something like specific, very very specific. Um but if you're working and mixing in pairs and keeping everything more or less linked up like level wise anyway, um it'll end up sounding pretty close to where you want it just because, it's essentially like micro gain staging and then like cross gain staging between like different elements and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, and I think this is just a transient. Yeah, just emphasizing that a bit more. Distortion, multi-band dynamics. This is to really bring out that like high-end fuzz and just kind of break the sound a little bit. And then this is a transient shaper alongside corpus,
Hmm.
which corpus again is used as just alongside the main melody line to really add a bit more harmonic content. And you can hear it's very subtle, but there's like this little like
Yeah.
the on the decay, like
I'm also hearing it click more. Oh
yeah,
yeah, there we
yeah,
go. I heard that.
exactly.
That's the thing when I really like that little flutter. It's like has so much character.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And my goal wasn't to like try to like just really blow it out, Like I really love things that have like their own decay that doesn't necessarily like need to be there, sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so with this guitar, I wanted to give it like this weird, almost like warbly quality, but without like going heavy-handed on it with like a flanger or something like that. So I just
Yeah.
kind of used elements that were already existing in the track, obviously like the pan MIDI, and then sent it to Corpus, which is also I think this very same Corpus patch or kind of group is the same thing that's being used on the main pan melody,
Hmm.
one that's
Yeah.
like yeah, yeah. And then from there, just different stereo effects to kind of really widen it a bit more. Another OTT.
So just a heads
Some
up. Again,
chorus.
we can't see the stuff at the bottom, but
Oh yeah, okay.
you've done a good job explaining what everything's doing. So I don't think it's a big problem or anything. But yeah, we
Sure, yeah.
can't quite see it. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So and then is there anything after the stereo effects, or is that kind of the last thing in the chain?
Uh, just limiting compression.
Okay.
This is kind of here. Let's see if I can demonstrate this. Can you see this?
Yeah, I can see it.
Excellent. So the biggest thing I really really enjoy doing with like effects chains, and one of the reasons that I think Ableton's like so decent is just being able to kind of process in parallel like this just really quickly. So this is just taming some of the upper harmonics or like that upper like click just a little bit, and then learn it with a clean sample, and then with another chorus effect, which I think this one is the kilohertz kilobytes one. But yep, and then just scooping out some of that low,
Yeah.
get rid of the mud in the 500 range, and then finish it off with a little bit of saturation, and that's the sound.
It sounds really good. I think my favorite thing is how plucky and transienty it sounds, but like has like that really like kind of subtle body to it. Um, I don't know. I think this is like a really good sound design decision on your part to include this because it it almost it feels very percussive, similar to the record because the song is mostly percussion, but like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
this the melodic elements you have like the pan snare kind of thing, and then this sitar like they both also sound like percussion, but like tonal.
Hmm.
Like it really
Yeah,
works.
yeah. This one I also really enjoy because of the sort of subtle swing that it introduces.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see that most of these drum samples and stuff like that are pretty on the grid. But what I like to do, especially with drum samples and stuff like this, is I'll have like the peak of the sound is usually like a couple seconds delayed, you know?
Yeah.
And just being able to mess with the kind of delay within the audio sample itself, and then just kind of positioning that delay precisely on the grid, um, you get some really interesting effects with like the pocket and the swing of the rhythm
Yeah.
alongside just something like this, which is really on. Yeah, sort of. I guess it's a little bit late too, but yeah, just little delays here and there, and just kind of bumping and moving audio around until it really just starts to groove. is definitely something I really, really enjoy doing.
Yeah, and it a little goes a long way. Like that's something I've started doing more in my music, and
Hmm.
it really pays dividends. Good ROI, I guess you could say. Um,
Oh yeah.
so that's pretty cool. Are there any other features you want to show me before I start asking you about the I guess like the mixing or whatever?
Yeah, let's jump into mixing.
So I guess why don't by the way, the Sono bus is still visible on the screen. By the way,
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know if okay. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so why don't you kind of walk me through a bit how from like a holistic standpoint how you handled I guess like the mixing and mastering process. Um
Sure.
but before
Um.
before we get started on that,
Mhm.
so I'm like we can see all the stuff on the bottom, but
Mm.
feel free to like extend the top of your DAW window like up to the top of your screen because I think that'll there we go. Yeah, and there's a bit of space to the left if you wanted to put yeah, like if you want to keep going a bit further. Going, keep going, going, and stop.
Excellent. Cool.
Yeah. for
Stupid
so
large
for context
displays.
for anyone watching this, it took us like over an hour before this to get like the audio routed and set up. It was such a like nightmare. We had to.
Uh,
It's I
yeah.
can put some details of that in the description, but it's actually kind of
Mm.
comical how crazy we have the audio routing set up for to do this. Um,
Yeah. Sonobus.
yeah,
Shout out to Sonobus for actually working
yeah.
right away.
I mean, it's fucking stupid that we have to use like us like online server thing to route the audio between us, but it's
Mm.
working. um,
It's working.
yeah. But all right,
So
yeah. So go for it.
I guess I will just sort of play the track without any like mastering plugins on it and stuff like that. Just to get a rough idea for what the mix is like. I'll play two parts because there's definitely like when it comes to mixing, unless you're kind of trying to get nuts with like volume automation and stuff like that, which I do to a certain extent, but I wouldn't say like I have every like channel just like slowly fade in and out and stuff like that. I feel like that's a way to kind of drive yourself nuts. So I usually like to keep static levels and then maybe with different filters or effects and stuff like that, kind of use that to sort of modulate the sound and maintain dynamics. Um, yeah, I will play sitar part real quick and then this ending part here because I believe those were like my two pivot points. Like if the mix needed to be changed, I would listen to these two first and then determine what needed to be changed. I mean, it doesn't sound like dramatically different, just a tad quieter,
Hmm.
maybe a little bit more dynamic. But I think in my mind, like when I hear this sort of track, I picture like almost like a pyramid, like a sloped pyramid. So like if this is like the upper end of the like harmonic spectrum, um, it's got more precise kind of like small articulations at the very very top, upper frequencies, and then just slowly kind of builds out until like the bottom has like a nice like wide sort of presence to it. Um, I say wide in the sense that it's probably got a thicker like lower end than top end. So it's kind of you can see it's sloped down here.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the like spectrum sort of placement approach I was taking with this track. I wanted to kind of maintain that energy because I think I started really getting that vibe with just the drums. And since the drums were like my favorite part to sort of like program and stuff like that, and just I really enjoyed the rhythm of it. I definitely have the drums be the focal point, you know. Um, but yeah, just kind of playing around with different small pannings and stuff like that here and there as well. Um, I actually introduced another drum outside of the nice textures. It's just like this weird jazz break.
It is a very nice jazz break.
Yeah, it's got like a more acoustic timbre, and it punches very, very well. I think one of the reasons I absolutely love working with natural drum samples is just because they have like this great room presence and punch to it.
Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, as far as sort of mixing the different matriarch stuff, different like wibbles and textures and stuff like that, I mostly kind of gain stage that based off of the input volume. So I didn't really have to mess with the mix on this one too much. Just like once I set levels, it was pretty consistent because the output level was consistent for the matriarch. Um, there's a few instances, I think, especially during this sort of effect, it's a bit louder, a bit of a thicker kind of timbre.
Yeah.
So that one definitely had to be tweaked a little bit, as you can see,
That's something I struggle
fine-tune
with too
difference.
when I'm doing like generative kind of audio stuff, whether it's like granular resynthesizing or I like have something from my modular coming in.
Mm.
Like there, it's sometimes I have to stick a compressor like on there while I'm recording, like a pretty fat one, because I get like
Mhm.
these huge like swells and these tiny little like things that come after it, and it's such a pain in the
Yeah.
ass to mix them.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely feel that.
Yeah,
It's challenging, but it's always worth it.
certainly.
Like,
Oh
the
yeah,
result is so much fun.
yeah. Um, right on.
But yeah, and then, just as far as kind of after the initial drum kind of groove was set up and mixed, you can see I use a lot of groupings. I wouldn't say everything has its own bus and grouping. I think it's definitely good to sort of keep in mind what should be bussed and what shouldn't be, because for the most part, if I'm going to be doing a bus, there's also going to be some like EQing and stuff like that. Um, simple stuff, really. I like working in very very small increments, as you can see, like a third of a decibel kind of thing. Um, and then just like having a lot of those instances, though, just kind of slowly build up and just change over time. I like to craft mixes like delicately like that. I really don't like going over like heavy-handed with EQing unless it's like sound design. Sound design is completely different, but for mixing, for sure, delicate touch is the way I kind of approach it, especially when
Yeah,
it comes to anything that's not super not super like sound designed, you know? So like with drums and stuff like that, there's not a lot of modulation over time. So you can get away with just having simple EQing. But
gotcha.
yeah, after the drums, just the bass was more or less already set up and mixed, just in the sound design phase. I think yeah, I don't even have like any bus effects on this, so it's really just kind of all about like gain staging and just kind of watching levels and hearing, just making sure everything's got like a nice consistent even volume, and then just kind of like I said, those the mixing pairs for sure. I really love to just like pick different elements of different buses and just see how they compare to each other and just the relationships of that. But mastering, everyone's favorite topic, right?
Yeah, the one that has no one agrees on what it even is. Yeah, let's just casually talk about this super controversial topic right now. Go for it.
Oh
Give us
hell
your
yeah!
hot
All right.
takes.
So my mastering hot takes. Every track is sort of different, but also mastering is a huge pain in the ass. The biggest challenge I had with this track was it was like way too loud. For the most part, just super super in your face, and it was just kind of taking away a lot of the dynamics and different elements that I wanted to keep like delicate, especially like keeping in mind like that sort of mixing paradigm of like that triangular shape.
Yeah,
um it would just squash it. It would just squash it, and just like it would ruin any stereo effects because anything was just getting too pressed and limited. So my solution to that was essentially work on EQing and kind of sculpting these EQs. So I believe this is the first one in the chain. um So with this EQ, you can kind of hear all it does is just kind of bump up the low end and just cut some of the mid while maybe accentuating a snare, and then give a little bit of lift to the upper end, upper harmonics there,
I
just
was
so
I
it's
was
more
about to
consistent.
say that like that upper mid like boost you got there. That looks like prime
Mm.
like snare territory, like snare
Yeah,
harmonic territory.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. But like, it also depends. I mean, I wouldn't. I don't think I like followed the snare. Yeah, there's a lot of elements that sort of occupy this range. I think this one in particular was to boost a melody, but
Gotcha.
I try not to do that too much in the mastering stages, just because it's
Yeah, it's more mixing territory.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. But everything is sort of bust out anyway, so at this point it's just just a little corrective sweep. This is when it gets loud, because this is an inflator, and this inflator does not mess around. So I mean, hopefully I don't kill anyone's ears. So it sounds quieter because the output is a little bit quiet, as well as the input, just
Hmm.
because this effect is like really, really pronounced, and all it's just kind of doing is just raising that noise floor just a little bit. Um, I have like those long kind of subtle decays and stuff, and I felt like it was getting lost within the mix, so I decided to add this to really boost that up a little bit and just kind of make make the track less dynamic while still not feeling like I'm crushing the shit out of it, you
Right.
know? But,
Absolutely.
yeah, and after this, I think this is just very subtle mid-side EQing kind of stuff. It's basically just like the previous, EQ, but just a little bit tighter, whereas this one's a bit more bubbly in general.
Yeah.
This one's just kind of spot mixing certain or spot fixing certain stuff. And then this one might be kind of controversial. I've used some bus compression just before the master, and you can see it's just a hair. I mean, like just barely hitting this compressor. Um, if I go too much with this, I risk like lopping off the highs and making it sound really just like dull and flat, and killing the stereo. But too low and it just sounds too punchy. It doesn't have that like nice glue effects. The things don't really swing as much.
Yeah.
Um, so definitely, I played around a lot with the attack and release of these two, or of this compressor, and then last but not least, I just put a limiter on it, and then sent around 9 dBs of gain towards it. And this limiter is pretty solid. I really enjoy it. Sonic's products are really decent. But one thing to keep in mind, I tried to play with the release and attack according to the BPM, and that's something I do a lot with mastering plugins. I'll tend to look because there's obviously like ratios between like if sound is sort of energy and like time or like distance, um, then sort of playing with similar ratios and similar numbers across things that control time and how quick things sort of move and dissipate, tends to get some pretty good results. And
That's like
I think,
genius. I've never thought of doing that before, but that's such a good idea.
yeah, I don't think anyone's really like told me ever to do that or mentioned much to do it. It always just kind of made sense to kind of pick, so like based off of your BPM, just kind of do simple ratio math, and
Mhm.
you don't even have to get like crazy fancy with it. You don't have to calculate like, okay, if it's a 174, what's 1/8 of a measure in milliseconds. Like what I tend to do is usually just multiple or like divide by two, multiply by two, and then go from there, and then just divide by two from there. And then you can get some pretty interesting subdivisions from that, and even just doing like weird sort of ratio based calculate or ratio based like inputs for various things. But
Gotcha.
yeah,
Well, neat. And that's the entirety of the mastering chain then.
yep, yep. Just
So, mhm.
EQ, inflator. So basically EQ, inflator or compressor, EQ, bus compression, limiter, and that's it.
So then, quick question. So this is
Mhm,
obviously a like a two track single or two
mhm.
track EP, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Um, and so I guess what's your process for getting this track and the other track to be, I guess, like similar loudness or similar kind of like spectral presence? Like how'd you do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually used the same bus compression patch, with some mild tweaks here and there. Mainly just kind of kept the same similar settings. I think for the other one, I switched the tone shift to dark just because it sort of fit the mood a bit more. Um, but yeah, just definitely if you want some sort of consistency across multiple tracks for like say an EP or release or something like that, um, it definitely doesn't hurt to use similar, if not the same patches across like each track, but I definitely spot fix certain things. So like obviously I'm not going to apply 9 decibels of gain to the other track,
Hmm.
just because it's a lot quieter. I think I ended up applying somewhere closer to like 10, 12, something like that. Um, but that's just because the track is far more dynamic and less like squished and compressed than especially the drums in this track. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so then you do the process of like checking the mix or checking the mix and master like on different devices or whatever, or like in your car or whatever. Is something you do?
Uh yeah, I a lot of the times I'll usually do two things. I'll listen to it in the DAW, bounce it out to audio, listen to it on my desktop, just with my DAW closed. And there's like 9 times out of 10, there's gonna be something I want to fix or I hear like immediately wrong once I'm not staring at like my DAW, you know?
Exact same for me. Yeah, that's it's
Yeah.
crazy how the our fucking monkey brains like deceive us like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. It's just like you just start noticing so many more details. So I have like a notepad and stuff. I'll write things down. Um, Outside of that, I use just like my phone speakers and AirPods. But I'll occasionally bounce stuff down to MP3 as well, just to
mhm,
kind of see, if there's any intersample peaks or clipping kind of like that. But I recently got an Aventone, whatchamacallit, Aventone. Actually, I might be able to show you. See this little dude here.
yes, that yellow box thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So basically that's just like a terrible speaker.
Okay,
It's a nice shitty speaker. I think that's kind of perfect. It's
it's
just
nice and
one
shitty.
tone.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it's like 50 or 60 hertz to like 16K, something like that. Like it really it misses a lot of detail. But that's kind of perfect because it's great for referencing.
yeah,
So I'll just like play something in mono, like a mono signal through there, and just check the mix that way. Um, yeah, it I don't think you have to go like super crazy and like listen to as many different references as you can, but it's always good to just do stuff like that just to see how it will translate.
exactly. And yeah, that's kind of what I do. I listen to not only like on my speaker, on my studio monitors and headphones. I also have like a sound bar on my TV with like a crappy sub on it. I'll listen there. I
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like I listen, and my sound bar sounds fucking awful. Like, and so if I can make it sound good on that, it's probably good to go. But like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly,
like I check my
exactly.
car because like I have a sub in my trunk. So like,
Nice.
and speaking of which, I was yeah on Friday when this came out, I was like, well, I know what I'm listening to on the drive to work. So and then yeah, dude, the shit knocks. Like, it sounds good with like a sub and everything. Like, it's
Thank you, thank you.
good car bumping music. But
Yeah, and that's definitely like that's such a goal of mine. Like I have such fond memories of just like being younger, just doing nothing, having nothing to do, so just drive around in my car listening to music. I love the car mix. The car mix, if I can nail the car mix, I'll be happy, you know?
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think the tweeters in my car speakers are starting to like deteriorate. Because like I've noticed
Oh
high
yeah,
end sounds like garbage lately. But um,
sure.
even with shitty tweeters, this song, all the fun little high end stuff sounds really intriguing. So props to
Thank
you
you,
on
thank
that
you.
one.
Much
Um,
appreciated. Thank
yeah.
you.
So before we wrap up the video, is there anything else you wanna talk about with this track, or anything in general you wanna say to the broader world?
Nothing in particular.
Right on.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Lucas. This was
Thank
extremely
you for having
informative.
me.
I know I learned a lot. This is probably my first like Ableton video, and so because my whole channel is like FL Studio, So
Sure.
it was kind of nice to get someone else's workflow in here and to be able to see how someone else does it, and boy do you do a lot of things differently than I do. But at the same time, obviously we're both part of glitch.cool. We have a lot of things in common in terms of our
Oh yeah,
workflow.
yeah,
So
yeah. Definitely, definitely.
yeah, I mean, I say we're so different, but you show like someone who doesn't listen to electronic music, they're like, this shit sounds the same. Like, uh,
That's
yeah. Um,
fair.
all right. So, well, yeah. So this was the track "If I Was" by Nuan Sonar. It's on the
Mhm.
let me get my Spotify over here. It's the New Horizon. I mean, on Spotify, it's listed as a single.
Yep.
So, but it has two tracks. The other one's called Matatat. It's also a very good track. A little less textural and glitchy than "If I Was," but still extremely fun to listen to. So, yeah, I think that's going to be it for this video. Thank you again, Lucas. And
Thank you very much, Nick.
yeah, so watch out for more videos soon. And I know I said that last time, and this is the first video in like 6 months, but soon, TM, I will have more. All right, thanks everyone. See you all later.